Welcome back to beyoungministry.blogspot.com and to the YouTube channel. I had a momentary brain fart right there. YouTube channel of Be Young Ministry. Today we continue in our blog and our podcast in Ephesians chapter 5. We're in verses 3 through 7, which reads, "But among you there must not be even a hint of sexual immorality or any kind of impurity or of greed, because these are improper for God's holy people. Nor should there be obscenity, foolish talk, or coarse joking, which are out of place, but rather thanksgiving. For you can be sure no immoral, impure, or greedy person, such a person is an idolater, has an inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and of God. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of such things God's wrath comes on those who are disobedient. Therefore do not be partners with them." Ephesians 5, verses 3 through 7. I thought to myself as I read this passage, why do you think Paul would tell Christians not to engage in this type of behavior, especially sexual immorality? And it dawned on me, he does so because even though we are born again and we are guaranteed heaven, we can still do some bad things, like having sex with someone whom we're not committed to. In our text today, the apostle is addressing the alternative for the believer in Christ. These are the appetites of the flesh, some of them, not all of them. And even though we should not feed the flesh, we will and we do. And it is the dumbest thing in the world because the flesh, according to Paul in Galatians chapter 6, brings with it destruction. Paul isolates sexual morality, impurity, which is demoralizing behaviors, greed, obscenity. Obscenity is cursing, using words that you shouldn't. Foolish talk, coarse joking. God's not against jokes, by the way. It's coarse joking. It's really raunchy stuff. And immorality. Paul is doing this because these believers in Ephesus had a propensity or a natural inclination. They were inclined to do these things. They had a natural inclination toward these sins. And you and I have our natural propensities or natural inclinations. Some people are inclined to lie because they've lied so much. Or others are inclined to use profanity. We could go on and on. But to the degree that we've fed the flesh, we're going to struggle with that. Remember, Paul had spent 2.5 years in Ephesus with these people to whom he's writing. He knew them really well. Every day we have the choice to feed the flesh, which are the sinful desires in us, or to feed the Spirit, letting God's definition of things define us. And having sex with someone who is not our wife or husband is driven by greed or covetousness. Covetousness is a deep, discontented craving that dominates us. On the other hand, if we are overflowing with thanksgiving to God, then we are not dominated and driven by the discontentment of the flesh with regard to what we in our fleshly mind, our ungodly way of thinking, think we have been denied. Gratitude is what we feel when we believe God is for us and not against us. Gratitude is what we feel when we believe God has our best interest at heart. So you could see how Thanksgiving is the alternative to a life driven by cravings for what you don't have, whether sex or money. Thanksgiving says, in God, I have all that is good for me, and I will not be driven to engage in the alternative lifestyle. According to verse 5, our root problem is this sinful desire or lifestyle in opposition to God's desires or lifestyle. Paul puts gratitude in the place of covetousness. He juxtapositions the two. He is simply putting God in the place of our fleshly desires. Gratitude enthrones God. Greed or covetousness dethrones God and usually puts ourselves on the throne. Gratitude says that God is the satisfaction of all my longings. Covetousness says that God is not adequate. He's not adequate to meet my deepest desires. I must have money or I must have sex, the flesh says, and God is not sufficient. And those who are defined, by the sinful desires, not those who are occasionally tripped up by these sinful desires, by the way. Those who are defined by these desires, it's their lifestyle, and they don't feel bad about it one bit. They will not be found in heaven. There's a huge difference between dabbling and totally embracing. Mind you, to give in the least bit is bad for us. You see, this is where the battle's really won. God is not out to rob us of our fun. The problem is that we have long believed a lie. The enemy has convinced us that feeding the flesh is the answer. Yet the second we finish feeding the flesh, we feel that sense, that convincing message in the back of our heads that says that was wrong. This is where confession comes in. Confession is agreeing with God that this behavior, which is contrary to his way, is wrong. Finally, Paul ends our text for today with a very important principle. Do not hang with those who embrace such a lifestyle. He says this because it is much easier to pull someone down than it is to pull them up. I'll close with a true story. When I was a kid, I spent most of my summer days in the neighborhood pool. By the end of each day, I was like a raisin. I remember vividly all those times when my friend Billy Heron would yell at me to help him out of the pool, holding his hand up. I would go over to him, grab his hand, and you guessed it, he would pull me in every time. You see, it is much easier to pull someone down than it is to pull them up. This principle is also true in the world of whether we feed the spirit or whether we feed the flesh. The first builds us up, the second invites destruction. It doesn't take a PhD to figure out the smart decision. My friends, I trust this podcast and this blog is helpful to you in your walk with the Lord. If I can be of help to you, shoot me an email at beyoungministry@gmail.com. Hey, have a great day.